There was a moment here in Australia, when the wind seemed to whisper more than simply breeze. Not the wind through a city where every breath costs something, where the rent is due and the power bill is coming and the water meter is turning and the council rates are calculated and the quarterly fees arrive with the specific timing of something that has never once considered your circumstances. The wind across open land. The wind through a town where someone looked at the numbers and decided that what they needed most was not more income but fewer expenses. And found, in the doing of it, that fewer expenses and more life are sometimes the same thing said differently. There are places in Australia where you can live for free. Not theoretically. Not with conditions so elaborate they amount to impossibility. Actually, practically, genuinely free. Where the housing is provided, where the land costs nothing, where the government is paying you to exist in a particular postcode, or where the combination of what is offered and what is required produces a monthly cost that rounds down to zero. We are counting down 12 Australian places where you can live completely free. Some require a skill. Some require a commitment. Some require nothing more than the willingness to be somewhere that most people have decided is too far, too small, or too different from what they know. And some are free in the way that the best things are free, not because they have no value but because their value has not yet been converted into a price. One place will house you, feed you, and pay your salary while you work in one of the most extraordinary wildlife environments on Earth. Another will give you land, waive your rates, and connect you to a community before you have finished unpacking. And yes, one location is so committed to attracting residents that the effective cost of living, when every incentive is applied, reaches a number that most accountants would describe as impossible and most residents would describe as their actual life. Like this video if you have ever felt that the life you wanted was being held just out of reach by a cost of living that never stops rising. Subscribe because one day you will want to find the place where the numbers finally make sense. And this channel is your guide to the places where that is not a fantasy but an address. Let's break it down. Number 12. Marble Bar, Western Australia. Marble Bar sits in the Pilbara of Western Australia, population around 200 people, holding the Australian record for the longest heat wave ever recorded, 160 consecutive days above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, a fact the town wears with the pride of places that have survived something most people cannot imagine attempting. The Shire of East Pilbara provides rental subsidies, rate concessions, and employment programs that together reduce the effective cost of living to near zero for qualifying residents. Government housing is available for essential workers at heavily subsidized rates. The remote area tax offset applies significantly. For workers in health, education, and essential services, housing costs approach zero while incomes accumulate at rates unavailable in the city. Private properties sit between $40,000 and $80,000. The Pilbara landscape is ancient and extraordinary. The Marble Bar itself, a bar of jasper crossing the Kudgong River, is striped red and green and old in a way that makes the word old feel insufficient. The night sky, with no light pollution for hundreds of kilometers, is the sky most Australians have stopped being able to see. One essential worker wrote, "I paid almost nothing to live there. The housing subsidy covered most of my rent. The tax offset covered the rest. I banked my entire salary for 18 months. The heat was real. The savings were realer. The trade-off is extreme heat requiring daily life to be managed around temperature, limited services, and hours of travel to the nearest city." Picture this. It is a winter morning in the Pilbara, cool, clear, the Jasper Bar crossing the river in colors that have no equivalent anywhere else. Your housing subsidy is applied. Your salary is untouched. The heat is coming but is not here yet and this morning costs nothing. Number 11. Coober Pedy, South Australia. Coober Pedy is the opal mining capital of the world, built around the possibility of finding something extraordinary underground, optimistic, independent, entirely comfortable with the idea that conventional rules about how to live do not necessarily apply here. The town's underground homes, dugouts cut into sandstone, maintain a constant cool temperature regardless of surface heat exceeding 50 degrees. Established dugouts sell for between $50,000 and $120,000. South Australian government remote area programs provide rate concessions and service subsidies. The remote area tax offset is significant. Opal mining leases can be claimed and worked by individuals with an inexpensive license, and opal found on your lease is yours. What makes Coober Pedy genuinely unusual is the underground dimension. The dugout maintains its temperature through summer without air conditioning, making the power bill a fraction of a conventional house in the same climate. The combination of low housing costs, tax offset, and mining income potential creates a pathway to near-free living that is entirely real. One opal miner wrote, "I own my dugout. I work my lease. The cost of being here is low enough that the years when the opals are not good are still manageable. I have not paid conventional rent since I arrived. The underground changes everything. The trade-off is extreme isolation, intense surface heat, a community culture entirely its own, and the inherent uncertainty of mining income." Picture this. It is noon and 52 degrees above ground. You are in your dugout at 22 degrees, which is what it is every day of the year. Above you the opal fields stretch in every direction. Your housing cost approaches zero. The heat is up there. You are down here. This is the correct arrangement. Number 10. Menindee, New South Wales. Menindee sits on the Darling River in outback New South Wales near the lakes that bear its name, which fill from the Darling in wet years and become one of the great bird congregation events in Australia, attracting pelicans and cormorants in numbers that make the sky complicated. Properties in Menindee are available for between $30,000 and $70,000. Rental accommodation runs between $120 and $180 per week. Essential workers receive housing and salary packages, making the effective cost of living approach zero. Remote area provisions reduce tax obligations. The community is small and genuine, and arriving with the intention of contributing makes you immediately welcome. The Darling River and the Menindee Lakes are the feature. When the lakes fill, the bird life is one of the great wildlife spectacles in inland Australia, pelicans arriving in thousands, water returning to clay, the transformation that reminds you this country operates on a timescale that makes human planning feel approximate. One teacher who relocated wrote, "The housing package covered my accommodation entirely. The tax offset reduced my obligations significantly. My effective cost of living was lower than anywhere I had lived since leaving home. And the lakes, when they filled, were the most extraordinary thing I have seen in 20 years of regional Australia. The trade-off is the uncertainty of the river system, the isolation, the small community, and genuine remoteness from specialist services." Picture this. It is a morning when the lakes are full. The pelicans have arrived in numbers that change the sky. The Darling is running. Your housing is covered. The river has been here longer than the town, and this morning the water is high and the birds are here, and witnessing it costs nothing. Number 9. Longreach, Queensland. Longreach sits in the Queensland Channel Country, population around 3,000 people, at the centre of things, the centre of Queensland, the centre of Australian pastoral history, the site of the original Qantas hangar, the home of the Australian Stockman's Hall of Fame. Queensland Government Outback incentive programs include relocation grants, housing packages eliminating accommodation costs for qualifying roles, and the remote area tax offset. Healthcare workers, teachers, and essential services professionals are the primary targets. Properties are available between $120,000 and $220,000. The combination of employment packages, housing inclusion, and offset can produce an effective monthly cost approaching zero, while income accumulates at rates simply not available in the city. The Thomson River runs through Longreach, and the river precinct is the social heart of the community. The Stockman's Hall of Fame, the Qantas Founders Museum, Longreach has the cultural infrastructure of a place that knows its history and has chosen to maintain it. One nurse wrote, "My package included housing, a signing bonus, and return flights every 6 months. My remote area tax offset was significant. My effective cost of living was close to zero. I saved more in 2 years in Longreach than in the previous 6 years in Brisbane. The outback sky at night was something I did not expect to miss. The trade-off is genuine remoteness, summer heat, small community dynamics, and distance from specialist medical care. Picture this. It is an evening in Longreach. The Thomson River is catching the last light. The outback sky is beginning its nightly transformation. Your housing package is in effect. Your savings are growing without effort because the effort you used to spend on survival is now available for something else. Number 8. Thursday Island, Queensland. Thursday Island sits at the top of Australia in the Torres Strait, 11 kilometers off Cape York, in waters shallow and warm and scattered with over 270 islands of which fewer than 20 are inhabited. Government packages for workers on Thursday Island are among the most comprehensive in Australia. Housing is provided at no cost for most government employees. Return flights to the mainland are included in most employment contracts. The remote area tax offset applies at one of the highest rates in the country. For teachers, healthcare workers, and essential services professionals, the effective cost of living can genuinely approach zero while full salaries accumulate untouched. The Torres Strait culture is distinct and old, and the experience of living within it, in a community built around the sea, around navigation, around the knowledge of people who have been island people for 10,000 years, is not available anywhere else in Australia. One teacher wrote, "My housing was covered. My flights home were covered. My tax offset was the highest I have received. I lived on Thursday Island for 2 years at effectively zero cost and came home with savings I could not have accumulated in 10 years of city teaching. I also came home changed in ways I am still understanding." The trade-off is the wet season, which is serious and long, genuine remoteness, and the challenge of living in a community that requires respectful and genuine engagement. Picture this. It is a dry season morning in the Torres Strait. You are on the water. Islands in every direction. Your housing is paid. Your salary is accumulating untouched. The water is the color of something that should not be free and somehow is. Number 7. Widenum, Western Australia. Widenum is a ghost town in the Pilbara with a complicated history, a former blue asbestos mining town whose contamination legacy has led the Western Australian government to remove it from official maps and actively discourage habitation. We include it here not as a recommendation but as the most extreme example of a place where cost is literally zero because the government has made property transactions legally impossible. The gorges of the Widenum area, now within Karijini National Park, are among the most spectacular in Australia. The ancient banded iron formation rock in extraordinary colors is accessible through the national park without entering the former town site. The lesson of Widenum for this list is not that you should go there, the asbestos contamination is real and the health risks are genuine, but that it represents the extreme end of the spectrum where cost approaches zero because the place has been written out of the system entirely. Zero cost is sometimes the price of zero services and zero safety, and the calculation of what free means requires including everything that free does not provide. One researcher wrote, "The people who stayed in Widenum did not stay because it was affordable. They stayed because it was theirs." Choosing a place because of what it costs is different from choosing it because of what it means. The most powerful relocations are usually the second kind. The trade-off is everything: health risk, legal complexity, absence of all services, and the weight of living in a place the government has decided should not exist. Picture this. You are in Karijini National Park in the gorges surrounding the former town, standing in banded iron formation rock 2.5 billion years old. The color is extraordinary. The history is complicated and serious. You are a visitor here, as you should be. Some places teach their lessons from a distance. Number 6. Birdsville, Queensland. Birdsville sits at the edge of the Simpson Desert in southwest Queensland, population around 115 permanent residents, a town that exists in the Australian imagination as a symbol of remoteness more than as a place most people have seriously considered living. Queensland Government remote area programs for Birdsville include housing packages for essential workers eliminating accommodation costs, the remote area tax offset at one of the highest applicable rates in Queensland, and specific incentives for healthcare and education professionals. The Diamantina Shire Council supports new residents with rate concessions. Properties available for private purchase sit between $60,000 and $100,000. The Simpson Desert begins at the edge of town. Big Red, the largest sand dune in the Simpson, is accessible from town and is the kind of landscape feature that people drive 2 days to see and that residents walk to on weekday afternoons. One essential worker wrote, "I paid nothing for housing. My tax offset was the highest I have received. I walked to Big Red on Tuesday afternoons because there was nothing stopping me and it is extraordinary. I saved more in 18 months than in the previous 4 years. The trade-off is extreme isolation, extreme heat, very limited services, and the psychological challenge of a community so remote that the outside world can feel genuinely far rather than merely distant." Picture this. It is a Tuesday afternoon at Big Red. The Simpson stretches in every direction, red sand, blue sky, an uninterrupted horizon. Your housing is paid. Your savings account is doing something unprecedented. The desert does not know or care and is magnificent regardless. Number 5. Halls Creek, Western Australia. Halls Creek sits in the East Kimberley at the edge of the ranges where the landscape begins its transition from flat pastoral country to the extraordinary gorge country of the north, a service town for the surrounding pastoral and indigenous communities with the particular energy of a place at the intersection of different worlds. Western Australian Government remote area packages for Halls Creek are among the most comprehensive in the state. Housing for essential workers is provided at no cost. The remote area tax offset is significant. Specific incentives for healthcare workers, teachers, and community services professionals include signing bonuses, annual retention payments, and return flights. The effective cost of living approaches zero for qualifying workers. Pernulliulu National Park, the Bungle Bungle Range, is 3 hours from Halls Creek. The beehive domes of striped orange and black sandstone are one of the genuinely extraordinary landscapes on Earth, accessible as a long-day trip for residents. One healthcare worker wrote, "The package was the most comprehensive I have received. Housing covered. Flights home twice a year covered. Signing bonus on arrival. I lived at zero cost for 2 years and the bungles were 3 hours away and I went 4 times." The trade-off is the complexity of working in a community with significant social challenges, the extreme wet season which cuts road access, and genuine remoteness from specialist medical care. Picture this. It is a morning in the dry season 3 hours into the drive to Pernulliulu. The Bungle Bungle Range is coming over the horizon, beehive domes, striped orange and black, rising from the plain in a formation with no equivalent anywhere on Earth. Your housing is paid. Your savings are larger than they have ever been. The domes are getting closer. This is a Tuesday. Number 4. Normanton, Queensland. Normanton sits in the Gulf country of North Queensland on the Norman River, population around 1,200 people, known to barramundi fishermen, to people who have driven the Gulf Developmental Road, and to the crocodiles that move through the river system with the unhurried authority of things that have been doing this for a very long time. Queensland Government Gulf Country incentive programs for Normanton include housing packages covering accommodation entirely, the remote area tax offset at a high rate, and signing bonuses and annual retention payments for healthcare and education professionals. The Berkshire Council supports new residents with rate concessions. Properties available for purchase sit between $60,000 and $110,000. The barramundi fishing in the Norman River is among the best in Australia, not a tourist pitch but the central recreational activity of residents who go to the river with the casual frequency of people who have access to something extraordinary as daily geography. One teacher wrote, "My housing was covered. My tax offset was the highest I have received. I went barramundi fishing on weekend mornings with the ease of someone going to a local park." My savings over 2 years were the most significant of my working life. The trade-off is a serious wet season, flooding roads and cutting access, remoteness from specialist medical care, and heat and humidity requiring genuine acclimatization. Picture this. It is a dry season morning on the Norman River. The barramundi are active before the heat arrives. A crocodile is doing something patient on a sandbank upstream. Your housing is paid. Your savings are accumulating. The river does not care and is producing extraordinary fish regardless. This is your Saturday morning. Number 3. Eucla, Western Australia. Eucla sits at the Western Australian border on the edge of the Nullarbor, population around 50 permanent residents, the last service point before the long run across the plain in either direction, sustaining a small but genuine community at the edge of one of the world's great empty spaces. The remote area tax offset at this distance from Perth is among the most substantial in Western Australia. Housing for the workforce maintaining the roadhouse and essential services is provided as part of employment packages. The effective cost of living approaches zero, while the remoteness premium on wages means income accumulates at rates unavailable in the city. The Nullarbor stretches east for over 1,000 kilometers without a hill. The Bunda Cliffs drop dramatically to the Southern Ocean and are one of the genuinely extraordinary coastal landscapes in Australia. The ruins of the old telegraph station at Eucla, half buried by sand dunes, are a meditation on impermanence. One roadhouse worker wrote, "I paid nothing for housing. My food was provided. My remote area tax offset was the highest I have received. I saved my entire wage for 14 months. I also stood on the Nullarbor at night under stars I did not know were possible and understood something about scale the city had prevented me from understanding." The trade-off is extreme isolation, very limited social variety, and the psychological challenge of a community of 50 people where the Nullarbor is the dominant presence in every direction. Picture this. It is a night on the Nullarbor. The plain extends without limit under a sky with nothing to compete with. Your accommodation is provided. Your wage is untouched. The telegraph ruins are half buried in the sand. The stars are the most honest thing you have seen in years. Number 2. Camooweal, Queensland. Camooweal sits on the Queensland Northern Territory border, population around 200 people, a border town where the cattle stations stretch in every direction for distances that make the word large feel inadequate, and where the town exists as a service point at the edge of everything. Queensland Government remote area programs for Camooweal represent some of the most complete packages available in the state. Housing is provided at no cost. The remote area tax offset is at the highest applicable rate. Healthcare and education incentives include signing bonuses exceeding $10,000, annual retention payments, and return flights. The effective cost of living for qualifying workers approaches zero. The Camooweal Caves National Park, 23 kilometers south of town, contains one of the largest cave systems in Australia, a series of dolines and caves in limestone that is extraordinary and almost entirely unknown to most Australians. One nurse wrote, "The package was extraordinary: housing, signing bonus, retention payment, flights home. My effective cost of living was zero. My savings at the end of 2 years were the most significant of my career." I also discovered the caves on weekday afternoons because there was no queue. The trade-off is the most complete remoteness on this list. Mount Isa is the nearest significant town at 280 kilometers, specialist medical care requires evacuation, and the wet season cuts access roads. Picture this. It is an afternoon in the Camooweal Caves, limestone chambers dropping into the earth in a system extending for kilometers. Your housing is paid. Your signing bonus arrived your first week. Your savings are the best of your working life. The caves are yours this afternoon. The earth opened up and showed you something. It cost nothing. Number 1. Kawanyama, Queensland. Kawanyama takes the top spot as the Australian place where you can live most completely free. A remote indigenous community on the Cape York Peninsula where government workers live in provided housing, receive the highest remote area tax offset in Queensland, earn significant remoteness loadings on base salaries, and receive comprehensive packages covering accommodation, return flights, and in many cases food, producing an effective cost of living that is genuinely zero while salaries accumulate at rates unavailable anywhere closer to a city. Kawanyama sits on the Mitchell River Delta on the western coast of Cape York, accessible by air from Cairns or the Peninsula Developmental Road in the dry season. The community has a population of around 1,200 people, predominantly Kawanyama Aboriginal people whose connection to this country extends across thousands of years. The natural environment is among the most extraordinary in Australia. The Mitchell River Delta, the wetlands, the river systems, the coastal country, is one of the great wildlife environments in the country. Barramundi, crocodiles, brolgas, sea eagles, magpie geese. The country is alive in a way and at a scale that most Australians have never experienced. Working in Kawanyama means working within and alongside a community and a culture that is not yours by background, which requires genuine respect and the willingness to understand that you are a guest in a place with a history and a knowledge that precedes your presence by thousands of years. The people who do this work well describe it as the most significant professional and personal experience of their lives. The Queensland Government's packages for Kawanyama workers are the most comprehensive on this list. Housing provided at no cost. Remote area tax offset at the maximum rate. Return flights included. Significant remoteness loading on base salaries. Signing bonuses for healthcare and education professionals. The effective monthly cost is zero. The salary accumulates entirely. One doctor wrote, "I lived at zero cost for 2 years. My savings at the end were the most significant of my career. But the savings are not what I remember most. What I remember most is the Mitchell River Delta at dawn, the brolgas in the wetlands, the barramundi moving in the shallows, and the privilege of working within a community that trusted me enough to let me contribute. That is not something you can put in an account. It stays with you differently." The trade-off is the wet season, which cuts road access entirely, genuine remoteness from specialist medical care, intense heat and humidity, and the deep responsibility of working respectfully within a community whose history and culture require more than good intentions. Picture this. It is a dawn on the Mitchell River Delta. The brolgas are in the wetland. The river is running clear in country managed by the same people for thousands of years. Your housing is provided. Your flights home are scheduled. Your savings account is doing something it has never done before. The country around you is alive in a way you did not know was still possible. You are here because you chose to be here, which is the only honest reason to be anywhere. The river is still. The birds are here. The cost of this morning is nothing. What it gives you is everything. And in that quiet hush, beneath the whispering gums, in the provided housing and the zero power bills and the tax offsets and the signing bonuses and the extraordinary landscapes that surround the places willing to give you everything if you are willing to show up, I realize not all shadows hide. Some simply invite us to see. We just counted down 12 Australian places where you can live completely free. Some require a skill the government needs. Some require the willingness to be somewhere most people have decided is too far. Some require nothing more than the decision to stop paying for a life that was always available somewhere else at a fraction of the cost. The packages are real. The remoteness is real. The trade-offs are real. But so is the possibility that somewhere on the Mitchell River Delta, in the Torres Strait, at the edge of the Nullarbor, in the Gulf country, in the Kimberley, there is a life waiting to be lived at zero cost that is richer than the life you are currently paying everything for. If this video showed you something worth seeing, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a different kind of map. We will see you in the next one. This video expresses poetic and reflective storytelling. Package details, tax offsets, and program availability are based on publicly available information and may change. Always verify current eligibility directly with the relevant government department or employer before making relocation decisions. It does not offer financial, legal, or employment advice.